Hi, this is Matt Baker. A few weeks ago, I started a new series of charts based on our popular Tree of Life poster, and I launched a Kickstarter in order to start taking pre-orders. Originally, the plan was to create 4 new charts, but today I'm happy to announce that there will actually be 5. That's because I'm now going to publish a standalone bird chart, as well as a standalone mammal chart. The other 3 will be the same: plants and fungi, invertebrates, and fish, amphibians, and reptiles. One of the reasons I'm doing this, besides the fact that a lot of people asked for it, is because we've now reached our stretch goal on Kickstarter, which means that everyone who selected 1 poster will now get 2 at no extra charge. Those who selected 2 will now get 3, and those who signed up for the full set will get 5. Now, if you haven't yet signed up to support the Kickstarter, don't worry, because it's not too late. The project is live until August 31st. After that, you'll still be able to pre-order, but at a slightly higher price. So if you're interested in learning more, I suggest you check out the project page now by going to usefulcharts.com/Kickstarter or by clicking the link in the description or pinned comment. The goal is to have all of these new charts designed, printed, and shipped out in time for the holidays. Now, the other cool thing about this project is that I'll be sharing my progress as I go, so that you, the viewer, will be able to give your input by suggesting things to either add or change. Last time I shared the first draft of the bird family tree, so today I'm going to share the second and hopefully final draft. I got a lot of great suggestions about birds to add, and I've managed to include most of them, as well as several photos contributed by fans through iNaturalist. So what I'm going to do now is go through the tree again and point out some of the things I've added. Okay, first of all, on this new version, I've made sure to include all 46 orders. And for each one of those 46, I've also decided to indicate the number of species that it holds. So that's what those little numbers are. Also, since the new chart is larger, I've incorporated more colors so that the tree now starts with purple for everything below the level of Neo-Aves. Under the Paleognathi, which are mostly flightless birds, I've added the one exception to this, the tinamou, which can fly, although not very well. I've also added 2 well-known extinct species, the moas from New Zealand and the elephant birds from Madagascar. So, like I mentioned last time, Paleognathi literally means old jaws, and this is in direct contrast to all other birds who belong to Neognathi, which means new jaws. The Neognathi can be further divided into Galloansary, or fowl, and the Neo-Aves, or new birds, which is where most birds are found. When it comes to fowl, I added chachalakas, old world quail, and several more ducks for my animator Syawish, because he loves ducks. Let's now move over to Neo-Aves, which is where things switch to blue, which is appropriate because this is where we find a lot of water-loving birds. Although take note that not all the birds in this section are water birds. Like I mentioned last time, according to the latest DNA research, the Neo-Aves are now divided into 4 sections. The first one, Mirandornithes, I've now split into flamingos and grebes. And in the second, Columbaves, I've added several additional orders. These are smaller and not very well known, but since I wanted to be comprehensive in terms of orders, I went ahead and added them. Oh, and I also split Caculidae into cuckoos and roadrunners. Under the third Neo-Aves section, Elementaves, the Strysories, or nightbirds, was another area with a bunch of smaller, not very well-known orders that needed to be added. I'm glad I did, though, because this is where we find some of the most unusual-looking birds, such as the frogmouths. Now, 2 birds that were requested multiple times to be added were the shoebill, which, yeah, I've seen reels of this one. Totally looks like an animatronic, but is actually real. And the Hoatzin, which is one of those strange outliers that gets its very own order. But one bird that I can't believe I forgot especially considering that I was born and raised in Atlantic Canada, was the puffin. It belongs to the Alcidae family, which is where we also find the now extinct great auk from the Penguinus order. As someone pointed out in the comments, when Europeans saw penguins for the first time, they were reminded of this genus, which is why penguins are called penguins, even though they actually belong up here in a totally different order. The final thing new in this now blue section is the rail family, which also includes coots, which look like ducks, but like the stupid Canadian wolfbird, are not actually ducks. They, along with cranes, shorebirds, and the hoatzin, are now grouped together in a clade called gruai, which means crane-like. Okay, we now come to the fourth Neoaves section, the teleraves, or land birds, which is green, like the forest. As I mentioned last time, we get a major split here between the Australaves, which evolved in Australia and South America, and the Afroaves, which evolved in Africa. In Afroaves, I added a few extra birds of prey, but it is over here in the Caraceae morphi that I made the most changes. Another bird that I can't believe I forgot to add was the toucan, which is closely related to woodpeckers. But there were a lot of smaller, not so well-known orders that needed to be added here too, such as the rollers, which is where the name of this entire clade comes from. Now, probably the biggest change to this entire chart that I made was that I added a bunch more Australian birds, in addition to opening up shipping to Australia on the Kickstarter. Previously, I had mostly focused on North America and a bit of Europe, but this time I tried to be more global in my approach. So here we find one of the most famous Australian birds, the kookaburra, but we'll find many more further up. Let's now move over to the Afroaves, and in particular the Passeriformes order, which is by far the largest order of birds. As you can see here, it contains a whopping 6,705 species, which is more than all of the other 45 orders combined. So that's why it is here that we get yet another color change, this time to yellow. Now, most birds in Passeriformes are songbirds, belonging to the Passeri suborder, but a minority belong to the Tyranni suborder, which I expanded a bit as well. Take note that the name Tyranni comes from the same root as Tyrannosaurus, because in both cases, these animals are considered to be tyrants. Now, obviously, Tyranni birds are nowhere near as scary as a T-Rex, but several of them are known for fiercely defending their nests against larger birds. Now, previously, I divided the songbirds into just Passerides and Corvides, but there is actually another clade here that is important, because it contains a lot of the most common Australian songbirds, such as the fairy wrens, honey-eaters, wattlebirds, and noisy miners. However, Corvides also contains a lot of Australian birds, so I expanded them quite a bit as well. So for example, Australia has a magpie that is different from the common magpie. It fits in the Artemidae family, alongside the currawongs and butcherbirds. Then in other families, we get even more Australian birds, such as fantails, magpie larks, and birds of paradise. Not the plant, the bird. Now, personally, my absolute favorite category of birds are crows. So I expanded the Corvus genus a bit too, since I had room. Last time I pointed out the American crow. Well, take note that in the southern US, there is also a separate species called the fish crow, which is a bit smaller. However, when it comes to the northwestern crow, which is the type of crow found in my part of the world, the Pacific Northwest, it is no longer considered to be its own species, but rather just a subspecies of the American crow. Likewise, I incorrectly said last time that Europe had two main crow species, the carrion crow and the hooded crow, but they are actually considered to be the same species now. Finally, I added the two main Asian crow species, the large-billed crow and the hooded crow. Okay, let's now head over to the Passerides section, which is where things switch to orange. First, I made it a bit more clear that we get three parvorders here, Passerida, Sylviida, and Muscicapida. In all three, I tried to add more Old World birds, for those of you in Europe, Africa, and Asia. So in Sylviida, I added chiffchaffs, babblers and bulbuls. And in Muscicapita, I added nightingales and minas, although I also added catbirds, which live in the New World, and waxwings, which live in both. Finally, in Passerita, I added the African quilias, which in terms of sheer numbers is the most common wild bird in the entire world. I also renamed the New World 9 primaried aucenes Embryzoida, which is their official name as a superfamily. And I decided to use the final color, red, for them in order to help them stand out. For those of us who live in North America, this group is special because it contains most of the songbirds that are endemic to, meaning only found in, the New World, as opposed to Old World birds like house sparrows and starlings that were brought over during colonization. Finally, I added, as someone suggested, Darwin's finches, due to their special place in the history of evolutionary theory, and because, unlike their name suggests, they aren't actually a part of the finch family. Okay, so that's how the bird wall chart is shaping up. Let me know if you think any final changes are needed, especially if you spotted any typos. And if you haven't yet pre-ordered your copy, be sure to head over to Kickstarter right now using the link in the description or pinned comment. Next up, I'll be working on the mammal chart, so keep an eye out for a video about that sometime soon. Thanks for watching.